During the English Civil War of 1642 to 1651, England was divided between two camps, the Roundheads and the Cavaliers. This conflict has been directly tested in exam, so let's untangle it carefully. The Roundheads, also called parliamentarians, supported the Parliament of England against King Charles I and his royalist followers. Their goal was to place supreme control of the kingdom's administration in the hands of Parliament rather than the king. Milton himself leaned toward the Roundhead cause. From as early as 1641, he set aside poetry to write prose polemics defending Puritan ideals. His dislike of King Charles's religious policies began in childhood, and his strong republican views made him a natural Roundhead. This association of Milton with the parliamentarian side has been raised in exam. The Cavaliers, by contrast, stood firmly behind the king. They supported Charles I's belief in absolute monarchy and the divine right of kings. Their outlook leaned toward Catholicism, and many drew strength from the arguments of thinkers like Thomas Hobbes. Hobbes's Leviathan defended absolute monarchy under the social contract theory, and although Hobbes was not strictly a Cavalier himself, his philosophy aligned with the royalist side. This connection has also been tested in exam. Among Milton's contemporaries, Andrew Marvell worked closely with him and also supported Parliament, while George Wither, a Puritan satirist, and John Bunyan, the author of The Pilgrim's Progress, likewise aligned with the Roundheads. These examples are worth noting, as Marvell's role with Milton in particular has been asked in exam. On the other hand, the Cavaliers produced their own distinct group of poets, collectively called the Cavalier poets. They came from the ranks of those loyal to King Charles I, often from aristocratic backgrounds, and they embraced themes of love, loyalty, and courtly refinement. Charles himself was a connoisseur of the arts, and these poets flourished under his patronage. The best-known Cavalier poets, a list often tested in exam, include Robert Herrick, Richard Lovelace, Thomas Carew, Sir John Suckling, and Edmund Waller. To help remember them, use the mnemonic code Loyal Cavalier Care Well for Love's Sake. This code captures the names Herrick, Lovelace, Carew, Suckling, and Waller. In short, while the Roundheads pursued Puritan reform and parliamentary control, producing figures like Milton and Marvell, the Cavaliers supported the monarchy and gave rise to a refined school of poetry. Together, they reflect the deep cultural and literary divisions of 17th century England. Let's begin with Robert Herrick, often called the most original of the sons of Ben, meaning those poets influenced by Ben Jonson. Herrick was both an English cleric and a poet, and his works belong firmly within the Cavalier tradition. His two main volumes are Noble Numbers, published in 1647, and Hesperides, published in 1648. This publication detail has been asked in exam. Of the two, Hesperides is best remembered. It contained about 1400 poems, mostly concise, including many epigrams. Among his most famous works is the Carpe Diem lyric to the Virgins to make much of time, which opens with the unforgettable line, "Gather ye rosebuds while ye may." This exact line has been directly tested in exam. Other celebrated poems include To Anthea, To Julia, and Cherry Ripe, which showcase his light, worldly style. Herrick also wrote elegies, satires, and love songs. His themes focus on rural life, fleeting beauty, and human sentiment. Known for technical mastery, rhythm, and vivid imagery, Herrick's poetry blends the classical tradition with English folklore. His loyalty to Charles I places him among the Cavalier poets, and influences from both Ben Jonson and Robert Burton shaped his art. Now pause here, because another Cavalier poet, Thomas Carew, deserves attention. Carew was part of the group of Caroline poets and has also been asked about in exam. In 1630, he received a court appointment serving at the King's Table, which placed him in the heart of royalist literary culture. The Earl of Clarendon described him as a man of wit, moving in a circle that included Ben Jonson himself. Carew's longest and most famous poem is The Rapture, a sensuous work that epitomizes the Cavalier love of elegance and passion. This text has been noted in exam questions. Carew also admired John Donne greatly. In an elegy for Donne, he praised him as the king of the universal monarchy of wit, a phrase that examiners often highlight. Richard Lovelace was one of the most famous Cavalier poets, and his name often appears in exam questions. A staunch royalist, he fought on behalf of King Charles I during the Civil War, and his poetry reflects both loyalty and personal sacrifice. His best-known poems are To Althea, From Prison, and To Lucasta, Going to the Wars. These two works alone are exam favorites, so make sure you remember their context. To Lucasta, Going to the Wars, written in 1640, reflects his first political action. To Althea, From Prison, composed during his imprisonment in 1642, contains his most quoted lines. Stone walls do not a prison make, nor iron bars a cage. This exact couplet has been directly raised in exam. Lovelace began writing poetry while still a student at Oxford, eventually producing nearly 200 poems. His earliest literary effort was a drama, The Scholars, which was performed but never published. In 1640, he also wrote a tragedy called The Soldier, inspired by his own military experience. During the Bishop's Wars, he penned the sonnet To General Goring, another piece that examiners have asked about. In 1649, his collection Lucasta was published, bringing together his most famous love poems. Later, in 1660, after his death, Lucasta posthum poems appeared. This volume included works like A Mock Song, which carried a darker tone. Among his more surprising works are poems on animal life, such as The Ant, The Grasshopper, The Snail, The Falcon, and The Spider. These poems have also been noted in exam questions, and they even anticipate the kind of nature poetry later made famous by Ted Hughes. Lovelace's most enduring lines carry both wit and nobility. In To Althea, From Prison, he insists that freedom lies in the mind, not the body. And in To Lucasta, Going to the Wars, he closes with the memorable declaration, I could not love thee, dear, so much. Loved I not honor more. This ending has been tested in exam and perfectly captures the Cavalier ideal of balancing love with loyalty and duty. Even critics of his own century admired him. William Winstanley compared Lovelace to Sir Philip Sidney, calling him at once a scholar, soldier, lover, and saint. This epitaph has also been raised in exam, showing how highly his contemporaries valued his work. So, in Lovelace, we find the true spirit of the Cavalier poet, loyal to the king, elegant in verse, and unwavering in the pursuit of honor. Let's begin with Sir John Suckling, one of the most flamboyant of the Cavalier poets. Known for his wit and carefree style, Suckling embodied the accomplishments of a true Cavalier poet, and this has been noted in exam. He even left his mark outside literature by inventing the card game cribbage, another fact that examiners love to highlight. Suckling's reputation rests largely on his lyrics, which are natural and easy in tone, earning him the nickname Natural Easy Suckling. His most famous poems include Ballad Upon a Wedding, often described as his masterpiece, and the witty love lyric that begins, Why so pale and wan, fond lover? This line has been directly asked in exam. He also wrote a skit called A Session of the Poets and several plays including the tragedy Aglaura in 1637 and the comedy The Goblins in 1638, works that echo Shakespeare and Beaumont and Fletcher. Suckling was close to fellow Cavaliers like Thomas Carew, Richard Lovelace, and Sir William Davenant. Politically, he served as a gentleman of the Privy Chamber to Charles I and even took part in the failed plot to free the Earl of Strafford from the Tower. When the plot collapsed, Suckling fled to France, where he is believed to have committed suicide in 1641. His poetry, though brief in output, captures the Cavalier spirit, playful, witty, and often mocking lofty notions of love. Now we turn to Edmund Waller, another poet often mentioned in exam. Waller is best remembered for helping to establish the heroic couplet in English poetry, a form later perfected by John Dryden. Dryden himself credited Waller with reforming poetic numbers, smoothing English verse. Politically, Waller's career was dramatic. He entered Parliament in 1624, initially supporting the Royalists. In 1643, however, he was accused of plotting for Charles I and forced into exile. Only in 1651, under Cromwell's rule, was he allowed to return. He retired from politics after the death of his second wife. His poetry includes several pieces worth remembering for exam. Go Lovely Rose is one of his most quoted lyrics, a carpe diem poem urging the fleeting nature of beauty. He also wrote To the King, Upon His Majesty's Happy Return, and later Divine Poems in 1685. After his death, the second part of Mr. Waller's poems was published in 1690.